A once remorseful South Korean president, now on the offensive. Hamas's gut-punching realization of reality. Ukraine's shadow war against Russia, and unprecedented moves from Biden and Trump. This and more coming right up. This is the Dangerous Waters podcast, where we dive deep into dangerous waters. I'm your host, Alex, and in today's episode, we have a lot to talk about. First, let's go into what is going on in South Korea, knowing that the president has just failed spectacularly in a power play against his political adversaries. The South Korean president recently just doubled down on his martial law declaration and potential coup attempt of the country. Originally, the South Korean president was in many ways very remorseful and very sorry for the martial law attempt, which failed, which backfired, and did not achieve any of his political aims, which were to take control back from the left-leaning party in the country. Now, after this martial law was instated and failed and voted out by the parliament, he created a speech in which he was very remorseful at the time, very sorry, he was apologetic. But now today, just recently, he came out with another speech in which he absolutely doubled down on his original intentions with the martial law. He is both on the defensive and on the offensive with this statement. And within that statement, he says, quote, "I will proudly confront it, whether it's impeachment or investigation. I will fight to the end." This is his battle cry, and he is making these remarks as well as using this platform to criticize the opposition party for messing with his political agenda, for attempting to go after his allies using lawfare, and he intends to stand his ground based on this speech. We now know that he only requires 3 more deserters from his own party to vote against him in impeachment proceedings, and he's worried about that. He wants to rally his base and make sure that he does not go down without a fight. He has a very difficult time now in his not only political career but also personal life, because if he's convicted of these charges, he could be facing prison time or even perhaps execution. Hard to say, a lot of instability going on in South Korea, but this type of rhetoric shows that he now realizes the gravity of the situation he's in, and he wants to make sure that he can secure an outcome that is favorable to him using the resources that he currently has. Will he be creating more martial law or perhaps coming up with more wild card statements or actions? Probably, knowing the future of his presidency and life. For our next topic of today, let's talk about the excruciatingly painful, gut-punching realization of reality for Hamas, a desperate attempt to save itself, understanding that the tide has turned, that things are shifting in the Middle East, and that the support they once had is no longer there. Hamas was the responsible party for the October 7th massacre on Israel, the invasion into Israel, which prompted a strong Israeli response, invasion into Gaza, and the systematic destruction of Gaza in the attempt to root out Hamas permanently. Very large updates here today. Hamas has just come out and said that they are potentially in favor of temporary Israeli military occupation in parts of Gaza in order to secure a hostage freeing deal and a ceasefire in Gaza. This is a monumental point in the war, because this was something that Hamas was firm on during the entirety of the negotiating process. You know, they would concede here and there, but they would never concede in the sense that they would not want Israel in Gaza in any situation. A ceasefire for them means all Israeli troops outside of Gaza. At least that's how they framed it for the entirety of the negotiations leading up to today. But now we have hints that they are willing to concede in this area. They're willing to allow Israeli military checkpoints, allow Israeli occupation in parts of Gaza. They claim temporary, but really we'll see what happens during the next round of negotiations. There have been a lot of negotiations so far, and right now, with this concession being made on the Hamas side, it is looking more and more likely that we might be able to get some kind of ceasefire, or at least some kind of talking going on behind the scenes before Trump is able to get into office. Slightly related, this is an update to the Israeli effort to systematically destroy Syria's military before HTS rebels or any groups are able to wield any of the power that the Assad regime had. Israel has now, according to the IDF, destroyed 80% of Assad's military capabilities. There are still some videos that came out of underground missile bunkers, for example, but 80% of Assad's former military is gone. This includes warships, tanks, planes, all sorts of military equipment. And Israel is doing this so that they don't have to worry about a potential rise of Syria becoming a threat to Israeli interests. They want the next group coming into power to completely rebuild from scratch, in which they can have a say in what goes on. Now, we also have breaking news coming in Syria, but this time from Ukraine. Ukraine is waging a shadow war against Russia. They are really going behind the scenes. They are countering Russian interests all around the world. And in the latest case, we have what is going on in Syria. The HTS rebels, which recently just overthrew the Assad regime, actually received 150 drones as well as 20 drone operators from Ukraine into the battle to help coordinate with their logistics and to help push these rebel efforts against the Assad regime. So very massive implications here. What this means is that Ukraine is really, this is not just within Ukraine. This war extends far beyond just the Ukraine and Russia border. It goes worldwide. Ukraine is really trying everything they can to push back against Russia. The latest episode happening in Syria, but we've also seen this type of activity happen in Sudan, in which Ukrainian Special Operations Forces were seen fighting with the rebels against government-backed Russia Wagner troops. Many videos already out over the past few months, and we've been seeing more activity coming in every so often, in which you have the Ukrainian versus Russian fight happening in other countries. This war is far from over, and if anything, it is expanding. We really do live in dangerous waters. Overnight, we saw some pretty big moves coming in from both Biden and Trump. On Biden's part, it seems like he wants to cement a legacy of forgiveness and second chances, especially on the heels of his recent clemency of his son, Hunter Biden. So what did he do? Yesterday, we saw the largest commuting effort of any president in history. Biden has just commuted the sentences of around 1,500 people, basically releasing them from prison sentences. Many of these people, most in fact, coming from prison who actually were placed in home confinement during the pandemic that went on. He just commuted 1,500 sentences related to people in those circumstances. He also commuted the sentences of 39 people convicted of nonviolent crimes. Once again, this is the largest single-day pardoning in presidential history, really. We've never seen this kind of level coming in. The second place was only around 330 pardons from Barack Obama in a single day. Biden overtaking this by roughly 5 times. We also have rumors that he is in discussions with potentially large figures on preemptive pardons to protect against potential Trump prosecutions during his next term. Outside of Hunter Biden, we haven't seen any other high-profile figures being granted clemency as of yet, but that could change, and I believe it will toward the very end of Biden's presidency. In other news, we have potentially good signs pointing towards a strong U.S.-China relationship in the next Trump presidency. What just happened? Trump just announced that he is inviting Xi Jinping, president of China, to view his inauguration on January 20th. Now, whether this actually happens or not, whether Xi actually decides to go, is a different story. He probably won't, I'll be honest, considering the type of figure that he is and his elusiveness from many of these types of events. However, this is really an olive branch coming from Trump. He knows that the next 4 years and the relationship that the US and China will have is incredibly monumental to the future of our country, and therefore he wants to show a good look, just like he did in the first term, especially towards the beginning, in which he was actually awarded a full red carpet treatment, special treatment of a guest. Rarely you see that in China, and recently American diplomats and leaders who have been to China have not received anything similar to that. So maybe Trump wants to reignite friendships and potentially work on common ground and get a trade deal done. This was actually Trump's priority in the first term before coronavirus came into the picture. He wanted a comprehensive trade deal with China. The tariffs, ultimately at the end of the day, were not meant to stay permanently. They were meant to incentivize China into favorable conditions on a trade deal that was mutually beneficial. At the end of the day, Trump is a deal maker, a businessman, and not a conventional politician. Now that we're talking about what is conventional for politicians to say, we should also look at what Trump recently just said about Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada. In a Truth Social post, he called Justin Trudeau a governor, Governor Trudeau, which is very fascinating. Obviously, a slight hint, a little bit of a joke there, but this has wide-ranging implications. The reason why he said this is because we have a lot of trade imbalances with Canada. We are supplementing and subsidizing a lot of their industry, according to Trump, and so much so that according to Trump, we might as well just incorporate Canada into these United States. Very fascinating geopolitical prospect, and something that has been theorized and talked about really throughout the ages. Canada and the US being very major allies, probably one of the closest relationships two countries can have, despite the close proximity. Usually you don't see that kind of alliance, but in this case we do. Culturally, speaking the same language for the most part, similar customs. This is something that could happen. I'm not even joking. You look 100, 200 years into the future when the world becomes more starved of resources, more desperate. What will that mean? That means the U.S. having the people, the manpower, and the business expertise, the technical expertise to expand industry and really having to do so in the face of being starved of resources. People's opinions will change as they get more desperate, as the fight or flight response starts to kick in, as resources become lower and they need to figure out how to sustain a life for themselves and their families and the country. With Canada being a very resource-rich land, having all sorts of rare earth metals, uranium, and many different types of energy sources, such as gas and oil. So we could see maybe either a willing or a forced unification of the United States and Canada coming, maybe not within our lifetime, I don't know, but in the future, very possible and maybe even likely. Finally, let's take a look at Mark Zuckerberg's behavior recently toward Trump. There have been a lot of developments here, but over the past few months, we've seen Mark Zuckerberg dramatically change his tune, his attitudes on Trump. This especially was very clear right after the assassination attempt on Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania in July. We saw Mark Zuckerberg give an interview in which he called Trump pretty much very admirable, and from there, he's been really changing course and reversing his prior rhetoric and company policies, even in some ways, on Trump. Most recently, he just announced that he is donating $1 million to help Trump's inaugural fund. This comes right off the back of a meeting with Trump after his presidency was secured, and they talked about productive things according to both sides of the conversation. Hard to say, but I think Zuckerberg wants a piece of the pie. He sees what Elon Musk has been doing, the influence that Elon Musk has with Trump, and he wants some of that for himself. But at the same time, he has also come through a personal transformation. A couple of years ago, a lot of people laughed at him for looking like a lizard in congressional hearings, and not even that, but just in his natural setting. Over the past few years, he's worked on himself, he's worked on his body, on his mind, and he's really a changed man. You can just feel that by his presence. His overall persona, his character has changed. And this is something that maybe could be a good sign. Who knows? When you have these massive conglomerates, CEOs of big tech companies coming in to try to influence Trump, obviously, Trump has to be on the lookout for those kinds of special interests. But when you have people who work together for common good, it could be a positive in society. Who knows what's going to come out of this arrangement, but this is very fascinating news and a major shift, not just from Zuckerberg, but CEOs across the country slowly embracing Trump's agenda. That wraps it all up for today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe, like the video, comment, share it with your friends, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.